think I did.
Doesn't look like it's. There we go.
There we go.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I want to welcome you to the City of Houston's More Space Main Street Information Session number 2. My name is David Fields with the Planning Department. I'm joined by Melissa Beeler, also in the Planning Department, and Angie Berdino from the Downtown District. We're going to go around and do introductions in a second because we're trying to keep track of everybody who has joined us. But I want to make sure everybody is in the right place and they can hear me okay. And for anybody who has joined online that they can see a presentation on my screen. Can anybody see the presentation on my screen?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Phew.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay,
yes.
So what we'll do, Melissa's going to start with a round of attendance calling. And what we'll do is she'll call names because we've realized on Teams it's really hard for anybody to know when they're supposed to go next.
Yes.
Melissa?
Thank you.
First up, we have Andrew Hager. Can you let us know if you're present and what business you represent?
The Commoner, downtown, Fort Maine.
Carson Hager.
Yeah, I'm the same as Andrew. The Commoner, Cherry, 410 Maine, and 308 Maine. Thanks.
Welcome. Thank you. Angie Bernardo.
Bertineau, I'm here with the Downtown District.
Ryan Crimmins.
Yep, I'm here with the mayor's office.
Fabian Arboleta. Imagine he's probably with Fabian's, but would you like to say your name? Okay, maybe he can't hear us quite yet. We have Dave.
Okay, I just unmuted it. I'm sorry. Yes, good morning. It's Fabian with Fabian's Latin Flavors.
Welcome.
Thank
Jason Lowry.
Hi, yes, I'm here with bovine and barley.
Thank you. JL.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I see two people under Jason Lowry and JL on the participants list. Excuse me, if that's the same person.
Yeah, I think it is. I was having a hard time with the computer.
No worries. Welcome. Next up is Joe Ottaviano.
Yes, the Commoner and Cherry.
Thank you. Johnny Reyes.
Here, 712 Main, Finn Hall and Shake Shack.
Christina Meja.
Mejia, the Commoner.
Welcome. Michael Kaplan.
Yes, I'm here. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
I'm at 104 Main Partnership, and the trade name is 3 Fibs.
Thank you. Michael Collins.
Good morning, Michael Collins, 416 Main Street, bovine and barley.
Thank you. And then we have phone numbers 713-789. Can you state your name?
Good morning. Theodore Brackesellas, 312 Main Street, landlord.
And then we have 713-825.
I'm sorry?
Do we have somebody at 713-825 starting numbers?
Yeah, that's Amy Greenling with the Rice Loft Downtown.
Okay, thank you. And 832-341.
That's me, Asa Hanrahan, Flying Saucer, 705 Main Street.
All right, that's who I'm seeing. If anybody else joined, feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I just joined Blenny Hoaxa, Moonshiners, Boots and Shoots, 1004 Prairie, and Underground Hall.
And then we just have a new phone number, 212-365. Can you introduce yourself and what business you're representing? Might have just got on, so not, maybe they didn't quite hear me. All right, David, that's all I see here.
Okay, great. Thank you all very much. I think we're all dying to know who the 212 number is.
Oh, sorry, everybody. It's Michael Neff from the Cottonmouth Club.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry I'm late. I had technical difficulties.
No worries. It happens. We try to be as flexible as we can. So we're going to walk through what we are talking about today, the Houston's More Space Main Street project or program. This is the second of two information sessions. We are providing all of the same information at both. It sounds like a few people have joined us both times, which is absolutely fine. Everything here is very transparent, but don't feel like if you weren't here on Wednesday, you're missing something. What we'll do is start by explaining the program, going through what we've been thinking about, there are a lot of nuances to this. And then what we'll do at the end is ask whoever stays on the line with us if you'd like to look at block, and we can talk about very block by block specifics based on who stays on the call with us. Okay, so I'm going to go through the PowerPoint. Hopefully everybody can still see it. So why are we doing this? Right now you're all very familiar. During COVID-19, there are different restrictions on how space can be used. And because of these restrictions, Houston's businesses are constrained. We want to support them. We want to help our economy. We want to help our businesses. The first phase of this, something we were able to get up and going very quickly, was to allow any businesses in the city that have their own off-street parking to use up to half of that parking as table space. And that has been very well received. We recognize that especially downtown has no off-street parking store by store. So we wanted to look specifically at Main Street to see what we could do to help you. So this is kind of phase two, the More Space Main Street specific part of it, where we're talking about Main Street from Commerce to Rusk, where we're saying, okay, Main Street really doesn't function as a through vehicle street from end to end anyway. There are a lot of turns, there are a lot of the pedestrian plaza at the south end at Rusk. So if we closed it to vehicle traffic and said sidewalks would remain for walking, but the road space where vehicles go today, restaurants and bars could put tables out in that space because it's no longer being used for vehicles. And we're talking about a pilot program from once we get it up and running through March 2022. So a good long time so that we can really help support you all, and that any investment made, you have time to make that back and really populate downtown so it's active space, and we're both supporting the economics and supporting the livelihood of downtown. Before I go to that, I do want to say this is a partnership. The city is leading it because obviously we have a lot of levers we need to pull to get this done, but the downtown district, represented on the call by Angie, has been an amazing partner. We've been working step by step all through, as well as with Metro, who, as you all know, has quite a presence on Main Street. It is not as simple as just closing the street to cars because we've got a train running down the middle of it. So there are many more safety components of this that we're still working through, and we're getting close, but it's all of us together here helping you. So who can participate? We're talking about bars and restaurants in this stretch with the understanding that we have to follow the state and any other restrictions on businesses that are out there. So right now, restaurants can open. So that is what we're focused on right now. We're imagining pretty soon, fingers crossed, bars will be able to open also, and they will be allowed to participate as well. But we can't supersede a statewide, closing, temporary closing of those businesses. So we have to understand it may be rolled out as those openings happen. We understand that different properties have, some have businesses on multiple levels, and we can accommodate that, but we need them to work together because it's really the building footprint and frontage, which is our starting point. And I'm going to go through all of that in a sec. But if we didn't want people to worry that if they're on the second floor, they don't, look out on Main Street on ground level that they can't be part of it. Yes, there's a role for you here too. So I described in briefly what we were looking at. Here are some examples from other cities, what they've done to allow restaurants and bars to open up in vehicle space with different types of fencing or different types of planters, different types of either on the street level or on a raised platform. The top right is in Toronto, which is actually our closest example because they also have a streetcar that runs down their street. So you can see it does make kind of a different form, but it is doable and we are learning a lot from them. So I want to talk to you about what different buildings would look like and how we can kind of accommodate different forms. I apologize, I'm not a graphic specialist, but I put these together myself Monday night, I think. So I'm hoping you can all work with me. So imagine the first case is a business in the middle of the block. They're not at the corners, they're at the middle of the block. So if you are looking at a corner and you're looking north, you will see the building line all the way to the left. You'll see the sidewalk, which is 8 or 9 feet or so. Then you'll see the vehicle lanes, which for most of Main Street, it's somewhere around 10 feet. And then you'll have the rail in the middle of the street. And then it continues on, kind of repeats on the other side. So option 1, if you have a business in the middle of the street, you have your building, you have the sidewalk, the vehicle lane space becomes where you could put tables. But one very important thing that we, kind of a starting point that we realized was to meet ADA requirements, we need to put in a ramp from the sidewalk level down to the street level. And so if you're looking kind of at the street, at a cross section, that orange block would be a ramp. You can't see it sloping from this angle, but it would be sloping down. It's a little bit technical, and that's why we're going to spend a lot of time on this. A ramp like this has to be, for every 1 inch of curb height, has to be 1 foot long. So an 8-inch curb has to have a ramp that's 8 feet long. So, it does take up a bit of space. And, we need to recognize, so we're imagining instead of a ramp coming perpendicular from the sidewalk going towards the metro rail, if it was 8 feet long, it would basically get you to the rail tracks and not enough room for somebody to turn there. So we're imagining a ramp that is parallel to the sidewalk. You come out and you slope down, and then you have the space between that ramp and the rail. There also needs to be fencing around the tables, and we have some guidance on what that is. Oh, oops, well, that has a typo. Anyway, apologies for that. But the fencing needs to go all the way around and have 18 inches between the fencing and the metro rail, so that there's enough space there that if somebody is sitting at a table right against the fencing, they don't lean back and clip themselves on a train that's passing. And it sounds maybe far-fetched, but it happens, and we actually really can only make this happen if we know we can be safe about it. It is the first starting point. So that is why Metro has been so involved in the conversation. Another view of that same idea. So this is that same middle of the block business looking out from the building line, the sidewalk line, the entrance to the ramp at sidewalk level, and then sloping in this version down to the left. And then the space between the ramp primarily and the metro tracks is that space in the roadbed.
But David, I think we just want to also reiterate, and I know you'll talk about it in more detail, but we're envisioning potentially that the ramps, if you're on a corner space, you wouldn't need that because you can utilize the existing corner ADA access. But if you're mid-block, that potentially we could place ramps in inactive spaces. So instead of it being as part of your sidewalk cafe, it can be outside of your sidewalk cafe, and there would just have to be kind of a side or back door entrance. That way you're not taking up real estate within your street patio.
Yes, and so I'm about to talk about corners in just one more second.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep, no, that's fine. And Angie and I have been tag teaming on these, so she's going to jump in a bunch, make sure I give all the information. And feel free to put notes in the chat or raise your hand. You know, this is all to be transparent and give you all the information, everyone. So let's go on. There's one more option before we go to corners. One way not to need a ramp is to build a level platform at sidewalk level. So this is that same mid-block cross section you saw earlier, but instead of that orange ramp sloping down and then kind of an elevated space and a street level space, this is one level platform straight across, which actually creates more space for tables. Everything else in here is basically the same. And this is what it would look like if you're looking from top down. Just you come out from the restaurant, you're across the sidewalk, and you come right out to the level platform. But I think going to what Angie was talking about, so imagine businesses at the corner. What is we get to utilize what already exists, which are ADA ramps that already exist in the sidewalk at every single corner here. So if you're at a corner and we have those ramps, we don't need to add a new one. So you can come out your front door, your customer can come down the ramp into effectively, if you can imagine the crosswalk, because you're at the corner, and turn left and enter the roadway level space from there without having to add a ramp. So you would need an entrance at the sidewalk level and an entrance at the street level, but no ramp for it. And this is kind of what that looks like looking down from the top. And so that does save a lot of space. We've got tons of information on what ramps look like. The downtown district, being fabulous people that they are and partners. Angie, I don't want to steal your thunder, but are offering to fund those ramps, right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Okay. So, sorry. Yeah, so, well, we're expecting that, again, you would not have ramps going directly into your street patio. So if the ramp is located in an inactive space into the roadway, we would build that and cover that expense. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're about to go through, there are a lot of different combinations about what is going to go on every block based on how many businesses want in. That's going to tell us how much free space exists between there. And it gets complicated. I'm telling you right now, everybody, this is not simple. Otherwise, we would have rolled it out months ago. We've been working every step of the way. So I understand if there'll be a lot of questions here.
And just, David, before we go off the ramp topic, if we have one block in particular, the 300 West block, where we have so much a density of businesses. So we foresee it literally being sidewalk cafe abutting sidewalk cafe abutting sidewalk cafe, or sidewalk or street patio abutting each other. There may be instances where a ramp just is not doable, and we're willing to potentially not require it as long as there is a sidewalk cafe in place that then is ADA compliant. So again, I think the 300 block is the only one that would kind of fall within that. We want to do our very, very best to make sure that we have ADA accessibility to street patios, but there may be a couple instances where that just can't happen, and so we'll work through those issues.
Exactly, and this is going to be a team effort to get this out. We're all going to take a look. We're going to see what we can do. We're going to make that best effort. If it doesn't work, if we can't figure it out, we have a backup plan.
Yeah, because we don't, if a ramp takes up the majority of your street patio,
right.
That's kind of a moot point, because obviously we want people to be able to sit out there. So
one more thing I did get to mention earlier, the health department always does ask me to say this out loud. This additional outdoor space is not to be used for preparing food or storing food, only serving your customers the food. And apparently that's a very big deal in the health world, so I want to make sure I said it. Okay, so how much
pits out there?
Yeah. I'm not even gonna make the joke. I'm gonna leave that alone. So how much space could you have? So in theory, we could have just said every business can have just the linear frontage that their business kind of fronts onto their sidewalk, just extend it out into the roadbed. And that would be simple, and that would be the bare minimum. We didn't think that was actually doing as much for you as we would like to do. Part of this is to activate the space. And so to have a whole lot of dead zones without activity and have businesses that would like to use more didn't really meet the project goals. So we want to accommodate, we want to provide options that if there is space that is going unused on your block, we want to figure out ways for you to use it. So we have a lot of different examples, and I'm going to take a lot of time on this. Feel free to ask questions, and then we'll go block by block also. So imagine the top left example. So if you are a business, not exactly on the corner, there's a shop on the corner, but it's not a restaurant or a bar, or they just decide they don't want that space, you could go all the way from your business all the way to the corner because nobody else is taking that space. And in that case, that corner ramp would also be accessible to you because your patio, your street level is filling up all that space in there. Obviously, if you're just on the corner, you have that space. If there is nobody between you, and one good example of this is Finn Hall and Shake Shack, there are no other restaurants or bars in there. So those two businesses can go halfway to each other in the street bed. We want to fill that space as long as they're going to use it for restaurants and tables, for tables and chairs. Angie, are you trying to say something? Okay, sorry, I thought I saw your eyes. So that is one option, and that's kind of the simple one. The next scenario is if there are multiple businesses and they all want that space. So same ideas that if you're on the corner, you get your corner. If you're kind of a block or a store or two in, you can go all the way to the corner, but anything in between, you can go halfway to the next business. So the business on the corner and the business on the middle. Oh, I'm sorry, I just described this wrong. I apologize. Imagine this this middle business wants the space, but the business on the over to the right does not want it. So the business on the left and the business in the middle, they can go halfway to each other. And the business in the middle, because nobody else wants that space all the way to the right, they can go all the way to the corner to the right. This is very important. I want to make sure everybody hears this. If a business comes in later, either because they just opened or they just decided they want to participate, they get to reclaim their space. So putting your tables out on day one does not, beyond your frontage, is not a guarantee that you can keep that forever. And this is going to have to be a business decision each of you make that says, yes, I'm willing to take that chance, or no, we're not. And city can't make that decision for you. So we're trying to be real clear. If you could just be very, very safe and just take the frontage in front of your business and nobody could ever touch that, or you can take more of a chance and go bigger with the understanding you may need to narrow your space later. I want to stop there because those are kind of pretty big, heady ideas and probably take a little processing. Did anybody want to ask questions? And we're going to go block by block specific, which will help, but I want to make sure I stop here and give people a chance to ask questions.
I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, for the existing restaurants, they do actually have a patio, a sidewalk cafe patio. Is it necessary to have an ADA ramp, considering its same experience?
So we did ask this. If you are adding space down in the roadbed, you do need to provide access to it. But if you can't, then we have the way, that you are already providing the other space. So, we'll pull that back.
So it is not required.
It is required if you're going to participate in this program. If you're going to go down into the roadbed, you need to provide the ramp.
Even though there's an existing patio space already.
It is considered a different type of space.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
If there are businesses right next to each other, and if we take the option to build more of a platform, which disobviates the need for a ramp, can we build one, like 2 business wide platform and have one ramp, or does each one have to have its own ramp?
Depending on the space, we think there are ways for businesses to share ramps down into the roadbed. I do want to just be clear, it is going to be kind of space by space specific, because they actually have to be pretty close to each other. We can't ask somebody in a wheelchair to go from one very far end all the way to the very farthest end, because we were trying to get away, but we're certainly open and to work with you exactly on those ideas.
But Mike, if you built a platform that was, you could build a platform that was shared actually across multiple businesses, and you would just need to have fencing to designate your own space because that's needed for TABC, but you could share one platform, because I know that's something that we're talking about for the 100 block.
Well, yeah, exactly what I'm thinking of. The other question I have in that regard is when you're talking about building, I mean, I can build a platform pretty quickly. Is there a process of permitting? Like, how does that, have they discussed what that would even look like?
Yeah, we're going to get to that. There is a process. We're actually working on it right now. Just give me 1 sec to hold on that question.
Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Angie brought up a good point. Oh, go ahead.
No, yes, it's Michael Kaplan. I have a comment and a question. The first comment is if the 2 neighboring businesses, if they communicate with each other, and what your neighbor is going to do, if they're going to want to use the sidewalk beforehand, at a certain date, that could solve a lot of problems before they happen, right?
Yep.
But what I was going to ask you is, I am going to be a new business. I'm a new business that's not open yet. So as far as the sidewalk goes from the building out to the street, how much sidewalk are we allowed to use? Now.
It's
the whole sidewalk.
It's per the sidewalk existing sidewalk cafe guidelines, Michael.
Okay.
So, and just like today, a business can have a sidewalk cafe. There has to be X amount of feet for the public right of way, which is our pedestrian right of way. So what happens on the sidewalk is not going to change any from how it's permitted and it's used today. The new piece then is the street patio. So if you're opening a new business, then we would look at putting in a sidewalk cafe, and then also if you also want the street patio. But it would be for you probably a 2-part process.
Okay.
Many of the businesses already have the sidewalk cafes, which would not change in configuration at all.
Correct. And my last question is, and if you've already said this, I apologize, but when will this start?
I'm going to go through the schedule in just a second. I've not mentioned that yet.
Okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay.
Y'all. Okay.
Other questions while we're here?
David Angie, yes, one more question. Is Bellini again from Moonshiners. Is this somehow going to change or affect our occupancy?
So
do we get adjusted occupancy, increased occupancy?
So in terms of COVID approach, or I'm not sure?
Well, the actual occupancy
I don't think your occupancy takes into account your outdoor dining space, does it, Bellini? I didn't think it did.
It does, I believe.
Oh, it does?
Now. Yes.
Okay, well,
we'll have to check that. I was under the impression occupancy was just your indoor space.
We might have to verify that with the city one more time.
Yeah, we will
that's
ask
what
that.
was my impression as well. But Bellini, we'll make sure we we'll double check that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks. That's why we want to nail down everything. So if you are unsure, if you have a question that you think we haven't covered, please let us look into it.
On that last question, I think that if the sidewalk is covered, then it may not count against your occupancy, because if it rains, those people won't have to come inside. But if it's not covered, then it may affect the occupancy. If I'm wrong there, I could be wrong, but that's how.
Okay, we'll take a look at it.
Yep. And Brian Crimmins very helpfully has posted in the chat the link to the City Sidewalk Cafe permit. Two things I do want to mention. I can't remember if I have this later. One, so we have a lot of specs about the fencing and things like that. There is one piece we are still working out with Metro, which is umbrellas. So if you can imagine yourself as the driver of the Metro rail coming down the middle of Main Street, that driver needs a certain visual clearance to make sure they can see somebody on either side. And we are trying to work out the math right now on exactly what that means for umbrellas. As soon as we have it, we are going to provide it. But we would imagine you all want umbrellas at some point. So understand that that's still in progress.
And David, by the time this is approved by City Council and rolls out, and I know you'll go over that timeline, you'll have some guidelines in place that'll spec all this out, whether it's building a platform or the type of fencing materials, how it's affixed to the ground, umbrellas, etc. So exactly. For everybody, you'll have all that.
Yep. And the other thing is the thing Angie mentioned a little earlier, which is TABC. So one of the things that delayed us a little bit was trying to confirm with them what the right permit was. TABC created a new permit, and there'll be a link a little later in the presentation, specifically for this type of setup, because us and Dallas and Austin and a few others were looking into it. But we will tell you right now, you still have to do all the TABC stuff. Just being part of our program doesn't check that box. So, and that is the individual business's responsibility to make sure you do that. Okay. So some additional components. We are packaging this as a proposal to City Council, and I'll go through the schedule in a moment. City Council may accept it wholesale, they may make changes. The mayor has been incredibly supportive. Councilmember Gallegos, who represents this district, has been pushing us forward. He's very supportive as well. But everything we say here is still subject to final approval by City Council. But we are proposing to them no fee for participating in this program. What we are developing right now, we don't have it yet, but we're working on it, is the application package that Angie was just talking about, which we're going to make it as easy on you as possible while making sure we have all the information to know people are being safe. So things like who's the business, who's the applicant. We will provide kind of the specs or the recommendations on design material, but you'll have to show us what it will look like. You'll have to sketch it out. You're going to have to confirm that you understand the program details, including that very important point that if you are bigger than your frontage, you may need to narrow later. We're going to make sure everybody confirms that so we don't have any confusion later that was not clear, and that you are responsible for your TABC requirements. Here is the tentative timeline as of right now. And so if everything goes beautifully, this is how it could roll out. That we hope to get this in front of City Council for their approval on October 14th, 2 weeks from now, just under 2 weeks from now. Because we're talking to you now, we're hoping you'll all start thinking now about whether you want to participate or not, so that in those days right after it, you can immediately say, yes, I want in, that you don't have to start giving it some thought at that point. We're assuming the application process will take about 2 weeks to put it all together. It could be faster, which would be great, but we're putting in a 2-week period, and we will turn around those reviews in 2 weeks. Hopefully it is pretty simple, and we can get that done. And then, so after that, we'll know exactly which streets are part of it. So we can confirm we already have a draft traffic management plan based on who the blocks that have shown interest, but we do need to finalize that because we don't want to close a block that nobody is using that space. Install signs and change the traffic signals. The district is going to install barriers at the ends of the blocks so that cars can't drive there, separate from your individual fencing, but those are street end barriers, as well as those ramps that Angie so generously talked about. And then, so if all that goes, you'll be ready, the streets will be closed and everything will be ready for you to install your stuff right around November 21st. So then all the same information, but just kind of packaged by who's responsible for what. City, clearly we're working on the city council ordinance right now, the application for you, and then the review of that, retiming and managing those traffic signals, as well as the signage to go with it. And then our Mayor's Office of Persons with Disabilities, they work with this group that basically is an app that tells people with visual limitations what streets are opened or closed and where they can walk safely. So they'll be responsible for that visual guide. The district, they'll be responsible for signage specifically for this, for those ramps, and then the barriers at the end of the block to create those safe sidewalk crossings.
And I want to just interject here, and David, we just need to talk a little bit more in detail. The ramps, again, we would not provide a ramp into a business's space, but only into a shared inactive space. So we'll work through those details. But also, and it's not approved yet, it's going in front of our board next week, but we're proposing a street patio grant program where businesses, once your patio has been approved and is installed, you could submit a very basic, we're trying to make it a very uncomplicated application/agreement that would allow you to get just a flat $2,500 grant to help offset your expenses. So again, we hope that will be approved next week and hoping that would be helpful for folks.
And then for you all, your responsibilities. So first confirm that you want to be part of the program. Then identify how much space that you would want to actively use and start designing it. Submit the application to us. Obtain your TABC permit, and here's that link. You'll need to purchase and then establish your 4 sides of the fencing around. And one note about the fencing, police department did remind us that for them to enforce no trespassing regulations, that it needs to be kind of designated as space, and that also overlaps with the TABC requirements. That your furnishings in that space don't obstruct any ramps or the pedestrian right-of-way on the sidewalk. We'll ask you to train your staff on your procedures. So if somebody comes in, possibly in a wheelchair, how they get down to your space. Make sure they understand that they may be stepping down off of a curb if they're not using the ramp. So there are safety implications that you'll be responsible for. Any site-specific signage if you need it. And then making sure that anything you put out is stored and locked so that in the middle of the night, if there's a storm, there's no umbrella that goes flying on the Metro Rail tracks. Here is our contact information at the city. By now, you probably all have my email address because you have your Teams link to the meeting, so you can always contact me that way. At this point, I want to stop. Ask as many questions as you want. If I haven't explained something clearly, please go ahead. We're happy to stop and go through it again. We're still clearly working out some of the details. So if we miss something, let us know. This is the time.
David, it's Blaney again. I apologize for asking too many questions.
No.
Is the city or is the downtown adding additional security end of a night, let's say after hours, considering all these businesses going to put tons of money on these patios, and obviously none of us want them vandalized or show up in the morning and then have to go through the whole cleaning process and power washing every day.
Yeah, I'll answer that, Bellini, because we take on most of that beyond the city. No, unfortunately, the answer is no. I mean, we're not going to put additional staff out to guard or protect your street patios. We don't do that today for sidewalk cafes, so it wouldn't be any different. Will we deploy more of our downtown public safety guides, more of potentially SEAL or off-duty police? Will HPD provide more eyes and ears out on the street? Hopefully, yes, that will be the case, but it's not specific to keeping your street patios clean. That's going to be part of what your responsibility is. Fair enough. How about audio, video? Are speakers allowed on these patios? That's a great question, and yeah, we'll have to look at that.
I'll tell you what.
I don't want to interrupt, but
that would
nobody
be
wants
tough.
to sit next to it. Nobody wants to sit in a patio, and every time the train flies by, the noise is pretty loud. And by having some low volume, I think it would add to the ambiance, to the atmosphere for the guests sitting on those patios. Makes sense?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things associated with people would have to be good neighbors, and we, as you know, we've had some issues sometimes with noise ordinance problems. Right. And then I think one of the questions, and whether it's AV or it's lighting on some ambient lighting on those, we need to think about, and I kind of have it on my talking list for kind of as follow-ups for us of how you would get electricity to that space, so we don't have any type of trip hazards from your building or anything kind of weird hanging over the sidewalk. So that's something, yeah, we need to look at. Yeah, but that's a great point.
Yeah, I'll also let you know from the original More Space program, which was about parking lots, a little bit different, but City Council specified that you could not add or change any amplification versus what you had before the program started. So if you didn't have speakers in the parking lot before, you couldn't have speakers in the parking lot during the program. We will look in. We know Main Street's a little bit of a different creation, so we'll take a look at that. There are residents along the street, though, so we want to be respectful of them. So honestly, we need to confirm it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and please don't hesitate to ask questions. No apologies needed.
Appreciate it.
This is Michael. I got another quick question. Yeah. Is this slideshow, will this be available for us to view after we get off this call, or?
I'm going to email it to everybody who is invited to both sessions.
Okay, great. And you said this would run through 2022, but not specifically a date, because we don't know how this is going to all play out, right?
Well, we're aiming for March 31st, 2022.
Okay.
Which should get, we laid it out, and that gives you kind of all the major big events until there's a lull. We didn't think anybody was going to be passionate about being open for Passover.
I think that the point is not really trying to catch all the major events, but really making sure that it wasn't just a pop-up for 6 months. We realized that there's going to be some rebuilding time needed for downtown, for our businesses. And so the city has really graciously allowed us to extend it beyond just, again, it feeling just like a pop-up, even though it's temporary, but still over a year. So you guys also, because you are investing money into the space, and that you have the opportunity to benefit from it, recoup the money, and also giving us enough time to really kind of create a cool vibe and environment on Main to really attract people back to the businesses to Main Street to downtown, et cetera. So.
And I do have a quick question in that regard as well.
Yeah.
Is there a review process in place? Because the temporary nature is long enough that, you know, and I'm kind of thinking of the money we would have to put into and the relatively permanent structures we'd have to build. Is there a review process that would look at the possibility of keeping it for longer, if not forever?
I'll answer that one since Bob's not here. I'm going to take it from David, but there's not a review process in place right now. We are really focused on this being temporary as a solution to COVID. So it's very focused on that. For it to become a forever, we're talking about a major street project. Because there's a lot of things that would need to happen for it to become a forever project. So I think this certainly tees up the conversation for sure, because we know that there's always been a lot of people really passionate about closing Main. So I think this kind of gets the conversation going and gets us closer to that. But there would have to be, you know, from budgeting and planning, some, you know, big plays to make it a permanent, but I think it does tee up the conversation.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the basics?
Yeah, I have one really fast. I'm sorry, it's Asa from Flying Saucer from Flying. So you guys mentioned umbrellas, and I'm assuming there's a certain type of furniture that you guys want us to try to maintain out there at all times. Is this something that needs to be put back inside every single night and put back out the next day? Is it something we can leave out if it's, you know?
So we don't have a design
umbrella
for the furniture itself. And as long as it can be secured, whether you want to bring it inside or you have another way to do that, that's fine.
I think it's very much like it is today for sidewalk cafes, ASA. You know, obviously people don't bring their sidewalk furniture inside. The umbrellas, I think in particular, was the biggest concern, just because, I mean, I've been at the park before at Market Square and an umbrella goes flying away. And obviously it's never a good thing, but particularly when you're right next to a rail line. So that is probably the only piece of furniture we feel strongly that you maybe need to consider bringing. It may be easier to bring those inside versus just putting them down, may not be enough. And when it comes to just your type of furniture, obviously, if you have your big picnic tables out there, those aren't going to walk away. It just depends, I think, on the furniture you have. If you feel more comfortable, you know, locking those up, you know, with the big locks that sometimes we use, you may make a decision to do that, but it'll be your call.
Okay, great.
And then obviously, if when we're out there, we feel like there's something that may be a hazard, we'll obviously have those conversations with you.
All right, perfect. And then this is a very saucer specific question, but the two rails meet right there in front of us. So I guess there'll be a barrier at Capitol, as well as a barrier to the left of us, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that we would only put a barrier at the Main, so not across Cap.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's a reason for that. Because and this is important, all adjacent streets are totally open.
That's what I forgot to say.
Yeah, so we would have it at Main Street. So no one could mistakenly turn or do something crazy. And we would have those water barricades at each end of every block that's closed off. And we plan on wrapping those with graphics, so they're not these big, hideous, ugly barricades, so it can have some messaging, some maybe safety messaging and stuff on them, and they look good, or look as good as they can.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Sure. Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question. This is Theodore at 312 Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question, if I could ask.
Yes.
So the March 20, 2022, is that the duration, I guess, they're targeting for the program?
Yep.
So it looks like there's some moving parts between getting approvals and maybe some TABC approvals and such. Do you think they may consider even extending that a bit further? Because, I mean,
it was a real push to get it that long.
This started out to be a 6-month program, so we've really stretched it, and TABC, everything should be a little bit more of a expedited process than probably people are used to normally. So I think the city's done a great job really kind of paving the way so that hopefully there shouldn't be hiccups.
Once they approve it though, right? I'm just trying to follow along, but that's pending they're approving it, whenever that might be, right?
Well, I mean, the process of approving your street patio on the city's side is going to be, fairly quick. We're talking just a couple week process. And David, I think that is a good follow-up with TABC, just for us to our team to have a good idea to make sure that things don't get somehow slowed down with TABC. It sounds like, because they're doing this in other cities in Texas, that the process is not as onerous as maybe it usually is, because it's it's considered an extension of an existing sidewalk cafe. Exactly. So if somebody doesn't have a sidewalk cafe now, there could be a little extra. I think we need to kind of find out about that, but hopefully it deal.
And they have said this is to keep the businesses that they serve going. So they're working very hard. They will not commit to a review timeline or date. We've asked them. That's just not something they put in writing, but they recognize that they want to get this done.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
This is Michael. I just have a question. If everybody on this phone call, or some people on this phone call and the one yesterday, if they want to share their emails with the other people, is there a way we can do that? Communicate between ourselves? Or would that be something that anybody on this phone call
Michael, we usually don't share people's emails, just because when that, with all the business context comes from the district and it's information that we've put together. I think that if you want to contact your neighbor and want something, just outreach to me, and I'm happy to kind of facilitate and make that way. So feel free to do that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, if I don't hear any more questions, I'm going to do two things. One, if you have all the information you need and you feel like, yep, everything's answered, you are excused, you've done your service, we will check your box. But now we want to open it up. If people want to look at block by block and what the different options are, we want to offer that as kind of a free service by acting today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show my screen on a different PowerPoint. Maybe. Hang on.
And for folks on the call, what David's going to show you, it was really based off of an initial email response from a few weeks ago that I sent out to all the businesses asking if you think you were interested. So if you see your block and your business that says opt out, don't freak out or anything like this. We were just working off of just kind of initial response that we got, just so we could kind of get an idea of what things would look like. So just putting that out there, because we had a couple people were like, hold it. Why do you have opt out next to my building, on my building? So
these are just meant as concepts, so everybody gets the ideas. I do want to also mention that when we are ready to go to City Council, hopefully in 2 weeks, we do, if you want to be, you think this is good for your business and for Main Street, we would encourage you to write letters, to ask to speak. The more council hears that we want to get going, the more support it.
Yeah, and I'll outreach to everyone with that information, just so we can kind of consolidate. So yeah, great point.
And credit to Brian Crimmins for reminding me. Okay, would anybody like to do a look at their specific block?
I'm on the 100
David,
block.
sure.
I would like to.
I'm sorry.
I said we're on the 100 block. I would definitely like to do that.
It's very funny you should say that. So that's the one block we don't have designed right now. There are a couple of other issues. We are working on that, and we're certainly moving forward. You're very familiar. The 100 block is very sloped in the middle of the block.
Yes, it is.
So
And it has very high curbs.
Yeah, very high curbs. So most likely that block would need a platform of some sort. The roadbed we can't find a good way to do it. But that doesn't mean, we have a way to accommodate that, and then you don't need the ramps anyway. But also the 200 block on the west side has to stay open. There's a parking lot that we have to keep providing vehicle access to. So the 100 block will be a little bit of a unique set. And so we are working that out right now. So I'm sorry, I should have said that earlier. That's a one block we don't have designed yet.
Yeah, and Mike, David and I had a phone call with Dan a week and a half or so ago just to talk through it, because we didn't want to leave, even with those challenges, we didn't want to leave that block out of the mix, because we know it's everyone to participate. So so those conversations have been teed up. You guys just are a little bit unique because of the kind of crazy curb heights that you have.
Well, thanks for
we'll work through it.
All right, I'll sign off.
Can
Thank
we
you
visit?
so much, everybody.
Thanks, Mike.
Can we visit
Bye.
500 block, please?
500 block.
Prairie and Maine.
That's 500 west.
Between Prairie and Texas. Between Prairie and Texas.
West or east?
Both.
Oh,
we have both locations.
Okay.
East side.
Got it. Okay, so I'll start on the east side. 500 east. Can folks see this? Okay, now remember what Angie said at first. We have randomly assigned ins and outs at this point. These are not set in stone. This is not moving forward. These are for illustration, concept only. Give me a street number. Did you say moonshiners, or did I hear that myself?
Moonshiners and Boots and Shoots. Boots and Shoots is 506 Main.
So 506 is the west side, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll start with moonshiners on the east side. So hopefully you can see my mouse. That's the lavender color box that's popped in at the top corner.
Yes.
Okay. So just as a starting point, and work with me here, if nobody else on that block wanted space, in theory, you could take that entire block length and fill it with tables and, and the fencing. Understand though, we're asking you to only take space you're really going to use. And because you're on the corner, no ramp would be needed because we have the corner for you. But let's, but if the business next to you, this is a different version, the yellow one wanted space, you could only go the length of your frontage because they're right next to you. But again, you still wouldn't need a ramp.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I understand.
Okay. And then different combinations depending on if some do or some don't, if the, two down does, and that we're going to have to work with you all as we see who's interested.
Okay.
All right. And then I think you wanted to look at the west side also?
Yes, please, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. Boots and Shoes is also the furthest one north because there's no business right now in the corner. It's vacant as far as I know.
There is a business there.
There is.
I haven't been able to get in contact with them, so we'll just have to.
Okay. Well, is it a restaurant?
I'm not sure exactly what it's leaning at
I
you.
think it's more of a bar.
Yeah, a little bit more of a
Not sure
nightclub. It's supposed to be a restaurant, but.
All right. Well, for sake of argument, let's call it a bar which can't open right now. We'll use that as our just concept idea. If they can't open and you wanted to take that entire block to the corner, you could with the understanding, and I'm saying this several times, if they come in later and want their space, you'd have to pull back from there.
Understand.
Okay.
And Boots and Shoots is a bar as well, but Bellini, we need to try to find a contact for the corner space just so we kind of have an idea of they think they'd be interested. So you don't go through a process and something happens. So.
And then south of you, that is vacant, right?
Yes.
So you could go halfway down to the next business, which is a little bit down, because nobody will be taking that space.
Correct.
With the understanding that if a business goes in there at some point and wants it, you'd have to pull back again.
No worries on that account.
Yes. Does that answer that? Does that make sense?
Well, one more question,
yeah.
David. Business in the corner doesn't opt in, then do I still have to build a ramp?
No, as long as you fill the space to the corner, then you won't have to build a ramp. You can use it.
Okay, that answers that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure, of course. And if you're trying to think about the mindset, imagine a customer in a wheelchair who wheels themselves to the corner. When they get down to the street level, they should be able to come right into your space.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anybody else on the call would like to talk about a block?
Yes, can we look at the 300 block, please? No, west side.
That's the busiest one, right?
I mean, 400 block, sorry. 400 block.
We can do them both. So here is 400 west. And which one were you interested in?
With bovine and barley, and then our closest neighbor, I think he sent a typed text on here as well. Commoner, yeah.
Okay, so bovine and commoner here and here. So we're not sure yet about what is that? Local foods? Do we know local foods yet?
Local food, the south corner.
Yeah. So if local foods did not want in, you could go all the way to the corner.
Right.
And then not need a ramp. If they did want in, you would not be able to go to the corner because they'd be there. North of you, that's vacant. So you could go halfway to the commoner. So that expands your space. With that caveat, if somebody comes in later and wants it, you'd have to pull back.
Right.
And I apologize. My dad was a lawyer, so he makes me I hear his voice with the caveats saying, make sure you say all the clauses and everything. And the commoner also could come halfway to you.
Right. Okay.
And Jason, the local foods did participate in the call the other day, although they haven't communicated to me that they were interested. So we'll just have to have that continue with that conversation. I don't think they're going to do it, but we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, not a problem. And if they were not to do it, and say both us and the commoner met halfway where the hotel space potentially is going.
Yeah.
At this point, for instance, if we were to build a deck on our spot, would the ramp for a commoner end up being in the middle somewhere right there where the hotel would be? Or
Jason, we would maybe want to look at kind of creating an inactive space between the platforms. Well, if you build a platform, we wouldn't need a ramp.
Right.
So that's what the great thing about the platforms is we get it up to curb where it's flush with the curb and you don't even need it. If you didn't do a platform, you didn't have corner access, then you would have to figure out how to put the ramp in to access the spaces.
Right. Yeah, the platform part would be probably more what I would be leaning towards, but say he didn't do it.
Yeah, so it kind of looks like this. And understand, again, this is just a concept. If you were using the street bed, if you didn't build a platform, this space in front of the hotel, if you can see my mouse, the red, would be kind of that ramp where we would imagine it.
Hey,
Gotcha.
Jason.
Yeah.
This is Carson. We're going to do a platform. So we're good there.
Okay.
I also want to offer
I mean,
to
that'll
you.
make it a lot easier.
Yeah, totally.
I also want to offer
It
to
looks
you.
better too.
We've done our best job at laying out options and considering best locations. But if you come back with an idea that matches all this, we are very open. We want to be flexible. We're trying to work with you. We tried to do a lot of homework to take some pressure off of you. But if you see another configuration that meets everything, propose it. Let's see if we can make it work for you.
Okay, cool.
I think I heard 300 Block West as the next one. It's complicated because there are a lot of businesses here. Did anybody want to focus on one or two particular ones?
I'm good on that. I actually said it by accident. I was looking at something else.
I forgot where he was located.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to talk about a block? Okay, just without requiring a commitment, just kind of a straw poll. People interested in this? Do they want us to be working on this for you?
On which part? What do you mean?
The overall program.
Doing it.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay, good. That helps.
Excellent.
Great. So here are our next steps. Out to everybody from either session. As you go through it, please don't be shy. If you have a question, reach out to me and Melissa, reach out to Angie. We're talking many times every single day. We're moving this forward. What was that?
It's just some reverb, David.
Oh, okay. If you are interested, start thinking about what it looks like. Start thinking about what it looks like for you, how much space you would use, recognizing we're asking if you ask for space, you really want to use it. If you work with an architecture firm, a design firm, they always have good ideas. We'd encourage you to talk to folks who do this regularly. And you know, we will continue to update you as we move forward so that when, fingers crossed, if and when we have City Council approval, you're ready to go as soon as possible. We're doing everything we can to really get critical path things done before that point.
That's awesome.
Good.
I got one more point. This is Carson Hager. I'm at 410 Main and 308 Main. You guys have 308 Main unallocated. We absolutely are interested in doing this.
Yeah, I think Carson, at the time, I didn't know you guys were taking over that. So that was probably pre our conversation about Cherry.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, but I've noted that you guys are in for both spaces.
Beautiful. Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments, jokes?
Thanks, David. Thanks,
Thank you all
everybody.
very much. You have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.